when you're lying on network television, you are going to catch the attention of one Brendan Carr, who's the new head of the FCC. And I'll tell you, this guy, he means business. He's a total bad you-know-what. And he went on Benny Johnson, my friend Benny's show. I want to show you a few clips from this. But here's the real hot one that got everyone pretty bothered. Because now the affiliates are going, wait a second, we're going to be in trouble. Like Disney's saying, we're going to be in trouble. They're going to just like suspend all of these affiliate licenses all over the country because you got one bad actor doing some really stupid stuff. Jimmy Kimmel, wait for it. Here is Mr. Brendan Carr.
The conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are avenues here for the FCC. So there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he had, emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And I've been very clear. From the moment that I have become chairman of the FCC, I want to reinvigorate the public interest. And what people don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Whoa. Okay. So that was sort of the important thing to hear. We can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. But if you're going to sit there and you're going to lie and you're going to say some heinous stuff on network television that the federal government has control over because, yes, they control the airwaves. Now, we're not asking here that it's controlled state media or it's controlled speech. No. Here I am, First Amendment champion. But I am saying, look, when you're dealing with federal airwaves, there's a responsibility there because you're supposed to be serving public interest. So how is it that these comedians have just, gone down such a partisan path? They're no longer funny. They used to poke, fun at all sides, and now they just have one sort of very angry element to their comedy, which is no longer even funny. I mean, just look at the ratings, for goodness sakes. I mean, from a business point of view, boy, oh boy, look at CBS. They're like, phew, we're going to save a ton of money. We're saving tons of money on Colbert because he was costing us $40 million. Some estimates of $50 million, whatever it was. It was many millions too much. Brendan Carr also said something else really, really interesting. And I think that this is now putting Disney in the position where they are at risk for losing affiliate accreditation all over the country, right? The licenses could be revoked. Brendan Carr knows this because, again, it seems as though there is an intentional effort going on to mislead the American people. And that's what we saw from Kimmel. But by the way, we've seen it in a lot of other places too. Watch.
I think, again, Disney needs to see some change here, but the individual licensed stations that are taking their content, it's time for them to step up and say, this, garbage, to the extent that that's what comes down the pipe in the future, isn't something that we think serves the needs of our local communities. But this sort of status quo is obviously not acceptable where we are.
You believe that what Jimmy Kimmel said rises to the level of news distortion?
Look, again, the FCC could be called upon to be an ultimate judge in that, but at this point, I think it's clear. It appears to be clear that you could make a strong argument that this is sort of an intentional effort to mislead the American people about a very core, fundamental fact, to a very important matter. At the end of the day, if we do get called upon to cast a vote on this, Disney will have a chance to put in their arguments and explain it. But this is a very, very serious issue right now for Disney.
Yeah, very, very serious issue right now for Disney. So Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, has been warned about this repeatedly. I mean, over and over and over again, right? Like he's been told, he's gotten several letters from Brendan Carr, and then this happened. And I think people just kind of had it, right? Like we're not going to deal with this anymore. I mean, for goodness sakes, we got to deal with the likes of Rachel Maddow and Joy Behar always worrying that they're going to be targeted. We got Whoopi Goldberg saying all kinds of things that are just incredibly inaccurate and incredibly insensitive, frankly, to half of the country. But I want to take you back to this one, because what the left is going to do right now, they're going to try and tell you, oh, this is a restriction of speech. They're trying to, make sure that we can't be heard. And I got news for them. There's something else going on, and it has a lot to do with whether you are at a network channel or at a cable channel. I mean, at the cable channel, if you're getting canceled, it's because, well, no one's watching you. Right, Joy? Rachel Maddow, 25 million for you, honey bunny. You are in a ratings, just like tunnel decline. Like it's a disaster over there. And they're paying her allegedly a lot of money. And Jen Psaki, same kind of thing. So at some point, as a business, you're like, this isn't working. We got to try something different. And yet Joy and Rachel seem to think they're one and the same. I got news for Joy. She's going to get canceled, possibly for FCC reasons, before one Rachel Maddow, who would get canceled for business reasons. Are you following me? Let's watch.
So you said recently that you thought that you, as an outspoken critic, could be a target yourself. Some people think that sounds overdramatic, but I'm right there with you. I think that he is so vindictive that he will go after, however he has to, through the IRS maybe, or even through sponsors to get us off the air, maybe, or you. Yeah. How seriously should we be taking that?
Well, so I was asked, am I worried about me? And my answer was, I'm worried about all of us. I'm no more worried about me than I am worried about everybody in the country. I think it's bad to have somebody saying, give me as much power as you can in this country so I can use it to go after other Americans. So I can use it to go after these subhuman internal enemies, and I'll destroy them. Like, that's just not a good system for anybody. And I don't think anybody's safe if that's the sort of basis on which he wants to get more power.
Well, remember when Nixon had an enemies list? That was a proud moment for a lot of people if they were on the enemies list. Maybe we need to turn it around like that.
Well, I think that if he decides that he's going to go after you or me or anybody who's well known, we have resources, we'll likely be fine. But I think there's a pattern where he picks out individual people and effectively terrorizes them.
But
there's Stormy Daniels wearing a bulletproof vest to get into the courthouse, right?
Once you have political violence, you have fascism following that. So
okay, here we go with the fascism stuff. That's our favorite line. But the reality is, Disney is in a lot of hot water in more ways than MSNBC. I mean, MSNBC is just struggling financially, right? Let's face it. They can't make any money over there because they can't get any ratings. That's very different than what's going on, say, at The View or at Jimmy Kimmel's show. And I think that's an important distinction that's getting lost in this, especially as the left goes on and on and on and on about how unfair this is. And, this is basically just Donald Trump trying to be an ogre and shut down the speech on the other side. That's not at all what's actually going on. And I think it's critical that we take a step back and we try and understand this. I mean, there's some business reasons, yes, why you'd want Jimmy Kimmel off the air. He's not rating. Nexstar was very upset with the commentary. Sinclair was very upset with the commentary. I don't think they quite, Disney did not quite grasp what a commanding figure and presence and force Charlie Kirk was, and what his death symbolizes and means to half of the country. So that's one big error. But then the other big error is, again, them not seeming to get that they can't be Gutfeld over on the Jimmy Kimmel show. They can't be the liberal version of Gutfeld because they are on network television, and it's very different. To go to a soundbite from the guy who is notorious, his claim to fame is Ms. Fang Fang, taken up allegedly with a Chinese spy. The FBI had to contact him about Eric Swalwell. Not the best and the brightest, shall we say, but he's part of the problem. He's trying to suggest that somehow the president doesn't have the authority, that Jimmy Kimmel has the right to be on the air, and that's actually not the case, guys. Watch.
Yeah, Congressman, I see you are wearing a hat. What does that hat say?
You're damn right I am, John. I was a guest on the Jimmy Kimmel show. He every night has a right to come into any house that wants to watch and entertain Americans, just as Greg Gutfeld on Fox has a right to be not funny and go on his network and entertain Americans. It's a part of who we are, John, and frankly, it should shake every American that the President of the United States is out there firing comedians who make fun of him. That is not who we are, and every American should care and stand up to this.
Except that, once again, I got to tell you, he is not that smart. He doesn't seem to fundamentally get the issue here, which is that you cannot actually put misinformation out on public airwaves when it is a network, okay? I get that Rachel Maddow loves doing it and does it all day long over there on MSNBC, but here's the distinction. And by the way, Brendan Carr articulated this very well. In other words, you got the affiliates, right? They get licensed by the government to be running the content from ABC. ABC is the content provider and charges them so that they can run the Jimmy Kimmel show. And then they have a contractual arrangement where they have to run the Jimmy Kimmel show. But they're sitting there saying, wait a second, is this really in our interest? Is it in the public interest of our community to be running misinformation? And the short answer to that is no, and they know it. But here's Carr explaining it.
Apart from the idea that you have national programmers that create the show, including the Kimmel show, and then they're given to and distributed over licensed TV stations. It's the licensed TV stations that have the public interest standard, including those TV stations that Comcast and Disney own. So FCC regulatory action focuses on those individual stations. And one thing that we're trying to do is to empower those local stations to serve their own communities. And the public interest means you can't be running a narrow partisan circus and still meeting your public interest obligations. It means you can't be engaging in a pattern of news distortion. We have a rule on the book that interprets a public interest standard that says news distortion is something that is prohibited. Likewise, we have a rule that addresses broadcast hoaxes. And so, again, over the years, the FCC has stepped back from enforcing it, and I don't think it's been to the benefit of anybody. Just look at the credibility of these legacy media. It's absolutely through the floor. They used to be able to say at least they were more trustworthy than Congress, but now they're even less trustworthy than Congress. And so I think as a business matter for them, something has to change. And at the FCC, we need to reinvigorate this. So again, there's actions that we can take on licensed broadcasters. And frankly, I think that it's really sort of past time that a lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we are going to preempt. We are not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out, because we licensed broadcaster are running the possibility of fines or license revocation from the FCC if we continue to run content that ends up being a pattern of news distortion. So,
whoa, okay, so that's critical. What he said right there, that's what actually got to them. So Sinclair, which owns a whole bunch, 30 big ABC stations, said, due to problematic comments regarding the murder of Charlie Kirk and programming provided to broadcast stations by ABC, Sinclair and its partners, which operate ABC stations in 30 markets in the United States, will stop airing Jimmy Kimmel's show until further notice. They actually also said that they would be offering forward to all of their channels and to any ABC affiliate that wanted it on Friday nights a tribute to Charlie Kirk's show. So they're trying to do the right thing. They heard Brendan loud and clear. They know what's going on. And by the way, don't forget, a lot of these channels all across the country, they're in conservative markets. And conservatives are like, what the heck is going on, right? So they're not even watching Jimmy. And the affiliates like, why are we paying for this? Why we could put a local comedian on who's going to do a better job and actually maybe talk about things that are relevant for our viewers. Nexstar came out and said the same thing. They were having nothing to do with this. So you get these big affiliate groups stepping up to the plate in a major way. They said Nexstar strongly objects to recent comments made by Mr. Kimmel concerning the killing of Charlie Kirk and will replace the show with other programming in its ABC affiliated markets. Mr. Kimmel's comments, they wrote, about the death of Mr. Kirk are offensive and insensitive at a critical time in our national political discourse, and we do not believe they reflect the spectrum of opinions, views, or values of our local communities in which we are located. Continuing to give Mr. Kimmel a broadcast platform in the communities we serve is simply not in the public interest at the current time, and we have made the difficult decision to preempt his show in an effort to let cooler heads prevail as we move forward towards the resumption of respectful, constructive dialogue. Good for them, right? Good for them for taking a stand. There's going to be more of this. You watch The View. There's going to be more of this. I'd say, hey, watch out. World News Tonight. There's going to be more of this. And they have the right to stand up to the plate and say, enough is enough. I want to go to the guy who got fired on CNN, but then was somehow rehired by CNN, at least not in an anchor capacity, because believe me, I mean, it's like they don't know how to pick any talent. I mean, this is not a guy you want anchoring a show. Although I'll look over at CNN and say, I don't think I really want any of them anchoring a show. I mean, maybe they have like one, Erin, I like her. We used to work at CNBC together, but the rest of them really and truly do not belong on television. Nonetheless, we'll humor them for a moment and watch Mr. Stelter's interpretation of how this all went down. Take a peek.
What we've heard some other liberals say in recent days, that the motives are unclear and that maybe the suspect in this case was a Republican or was some sort of far right fringe figure. Of course, there has been...
No, so that's just wrong, okay? That is really and truly just wrong. I want to get up here on the screen for a moment because Mr. Stelter now is lying to you. We knew very well that this kid was not part of the MAGA movement. The shooter was not part of the suspect in this assassination of one Charlie Kirk. He had nothing to do. His parents were conservatives, but he hated everything that Donald Trump and the conservative movement represented. And that was well known. And yet Stelter's on there on CNN last night and trying to mislead you. Now he can, believe it or not, on CNN. That's perfectly fine for him to do if somebody wants to watch it, which, you know, most people don't really want to watch him, and I can't blame them. But nonetheless, that is allowed on CNN. It may not be tasteful, but it's allowed. It's not allowed on broadcast, on ABC News. And this is what this guy, who they call their media reporter, absolutely fails to understand. I mean, this is basics, okay? This is 101. I've worked in network television. I've worked in cable television. And by the way, hallelujah, now I'm working right here, streaming for you. Please make sure you subscribe, share, like, make a comment, all that good stuff, because we're growing and growing, over 1 million strong right now, because I am rejecting all of this. All this partisan nonsense. This guy's up there stumping for the Democrat Party. God knows why, but let's continue.
A lot of discussion about that in recent days. There's a lot of evidence pointing in other directions about the suspect. But Kimmel was on the air talking about this, making a very serious commentary amid his jokes in his monologue Monday night. Here's where it became interesting earlier today. The FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, went on a far-right webcast and condemned Kimmel and urged ABC to suspend him. He also talked about about possible regulatory punishments of Disney because there are lots of different stations that have licenses with the FCC. Within the past hour, we've heard from a big owner of stations that have affiliations with ABC, a company called Nexstar, saying that they were going to suspend Kimmel's show on their station. So in other words, about 24 stations were refusing to air Kimmel's show tonight as a result of this controversy. And then following word that some of those stations were basically revolting against Kimmel, Disney, the parent company of ABC, decided to yank the show entirely.
Ta-da-ta. Okay, you see how that works. Business talks, money talks, but the reality is there's something else bigger going on, and that's that people all over the country have said we've had enough. You know, we elected Donald Trump for a reason. He won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College vote. And America's with him, just like America was with Charlie Kirk. And then you get some bitter comedian up there who's just mad because, you know, he can't score a number in ratings to save his life, and his medium is completely dwindling, right? Nobody watches network television anymore. And he's angry and he says some things, and it takes a really dark turn to the point where he's actually promoting disinformation and saying things at a very raw time about a human being that is not true, Charlie Kirk, and about the suspect that, frankly, is not true, trying to paint him as maybe one of Charlie's followers, as somebody who is part of the MAGA movement. That is all wrong. And so it's high time that people speak up. It's high time that affiliates say enough is enough. And that's, again, what you saw with Sinclair. It's what you saw with Nexstar. And so I'll tell you right now, the left, you can lose it all you want over Jimmy Kimmel. He does not have a right to be on the air, as Eric Swalwell states. He can go to MSNBC for that, really and truly. But they're freaking out.
And this is all about jawboning. It's all about public pressure. You know, actually revoking FCC licenses is extremely difficult. I wrote about this last fall when candidate Donald Trump was talking on the campaign trail about wanting to punish stations by taking away their licenses. And throughout the history of the country, ever since we've had broadcast television, license revocations are extraordinarily rare. Once you've got one, you're pretty much guaranteed to keep it. So the threat is not that the FCC is actually going to take away a license. It's about the public noise. It's about the shame and embarrassment. It's about Brendan Carr going on podcasts and embarrassing ABC. You know, there's a term for this. It's jawboning, and that's what we've seen happen today in a very real way. Trump vowed retribution on the campaign trail, and he's getting it. He's getting it against entertainers and comedians. But Aaron, for every reaction, there is a counter reaction. Stephen Colbert has already been joking about getting hired somewhere else. Those jokes mask a very real intention, right? Yeah. Where will he get picked up instead? If Kimmel parts ways with ABC, and again, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Kimmel's contract is coming due soon. Kimmel will probably end up somewhere else. And if big, old-fashioned mainstream media companies don't have the guts to employ these people, then we're going to see startups start to flourish. You know, we talk about the Substack era with people launching newsletters and live streams on YouTube. We're going to see more of that if these old-fashioned media companies can't stand a little bit of pressure from the president.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it is stunning to see such a thing happen and to show.
I will say this. It's way better over here on the other side. It really, really is. And, you know, Jimmy, if there's a market for you, which I kind of doubt, but Jimmy, if there is, then, hey, be my guest. Come on over here. You can compete against me. We've just been doing this daily, every day, religiously for almost 2 years. And guess what? We're up over 1 million subs. We had nearly 1 million people watching yesterday's show. I mean, incredible, right? So, hey, come on over here. I'll welcome the competition. I don't think you can do it. I mean, unless what? You're going to get 40 staff writers to help you with your really bad jokes. Think about that, guys. He had all those people that would have been helping him with this, working on this with him. How is it that you have an entire staff that doesn't see that something might be wrong with your commentary? That it had already been disproven that Larry Tribe, the Harvard guy, right, considered such a great constitutional law professor, he had to come out and apologize because he tried to suggest exactly what Jimmy Kimmel suggested, and that had happened at least a day before, maybe a couple days before. In other words, This was a deliberate move, and it tells you that everybody around Jimmy Kimmel on his little show there, not so little, they have a lot of people working there, little in terms of ratings, but they all agreed, and they all thought this was perfectly appropriate. And that gives you a special insight, if you would, right, into Disney. And it shows you how gross and twisted these companies have become with their woke ideology and their TDS. That's all it is, guys. TDS.